Get out. We don't allow beggars in here. The harsh words struck like a slap as Michael King, cloaked in a tattered coat and worn jeans, hesitated at the grand revolving doors of the Kingston Royale Hotel. His paper cup, shaking faintly in the cold wind, bore the simple message, God bless him. The doorman barely glanced at him before stepping in front of the entrance. You heard me, the doorman sneered. Take your mess somewhere else. Michael's weary eyes scanned the opulent glass facade, reflecting the city's bright lights. Ignoring the stairs, he stepped forward. Inside the marbled lobby, conversations died mid-sentence. Guests in tailored suits and designer dresses gawked openly. Is security asleep? A businessman muttered loudly. What the hell is going on? The concierge stiffened. A tall man with perfect posture and a polished badge reading Stephen, front desk supervisor, approached, his expression curling in disgust. You're not supposed to be here, Stephen snapped. This is a 5-star property. Our clientele expects a certain standard. Leave now or be removed. Michael spoke calmly. I just want to speak to someone, Stephen scoffed. We don't offer charity. You need to leave now before you scare the paying guests. The tension thickened. Whispers rippled through the crowd. He smells, someone whispered. What's security waiting for? Another growled. Stephen clicked his fingers. Security. A stocky security guard emerged from the corner, already tugging on a pair of black gloves. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately, the guard said without emotion. Michael nodded slightly. His face remained calm as he turned to leave. The humiliation was suffocating, yet familiar. At that moment, a soft voice cut through the icy silence. Wester Tawada Warden. The young maid, Maria, stood frozen by her cart. Her brown eyes flicked from Stephen's hard face to the exhausted stranger. She stepped forward and slipped a wrapped sandwich and a small bottle of water into Michael's trembling paper cup. Please, she whispered. You must be cold and hungry. Take this. Michael met her gaze with gratitude. Thank you. You are very kind. The air outside bit fiercely as Michael stepped out. He took one last look back at the polished Kingston Royale sign glowing above the heavy doors. The cold rejection burned like it had so many times before. Inside, Stephen straightened his tie smugly and waved off the murmuring guests. Problem solved, he chuckled. He'll know not to come back. But as Michael crossed the street into the drizzle, a faint smile tugged at his lips. They have no idea who I am, he thought. The heavy revolving door spun slowly behind Michael King as the icy wind outside lashed against his back. Inside, the atmosphere remained tense. Stephen, still basking in his hollow triumph, adjusted the cuffs of his sharp navy blazer and scanned the gawking guests. He's gone, Stephen muttered to the concierge nearby, a young man who only nodded nervously. Thank God. Let's get this place back to normal. Maria lingered near her cleaning cart, her eyes heavy with worry as she watched the entrance. The lobby's glittering chandeliers and polished marble floors stood in stark contrast to the cruelty she'd just witnessed. She had heard the whispers, the ridicule, the casual contempt that flowed from the wealthy patrons like poisoned honey. A tall woman draped in an expensive mink coat leaned toward her companion at the check-in line. Can you believe the nerve? Strolling in here like he belonged? They really need to screen these people better. Maria tightened her grip on the feather duster in her hand. She fought the urge to speak, knowing any outburst might cost her job. At the front desk, Stephen smirked and began recounting the incident to 2 colleagues, exaggerating his role. I handled it perfectly. You should have seen the guy's face when security showed up. It was priceless. They laughed in hushed tones. Nearby, the security guard who had escorted Michael out, a man named Thomas, stood still, his brow furrowed. The rigid professionalism he had been trained to uphold battled with a deep unease growing in his chest. Stephen's voice carried again. We're not a charity. This is a business. If I hadn't stepped in, who knows how long that person would have stood there embarrassing us? The elevator chimed. Guests shuffled in and out. But the undercurrent of mockery and superiority remained thick in the air. Maria busied herself straightening magazines at the guest lounge, but kept glancing nervously at the doors. She had seen something different in the man's eyes, a quiet dignity, an unspoken strength that did not match the rags he wore. Stephen continued his parade of arrogance. As a bellhop approached him with a clipboard, Stephen waved him off rudely. Handle it yourself. I'm not here to babysit. Thomas exhaled slowly, shaking his head. His gut told him something wasn't right. Out on the street, Michael King pulled his thin coat tighter, his mind already working. The icy mist kissed his cheeks as he walked slowly toward the corner, where a black sedan awaited. As the car door opened silently, he slid into the warm leather interior. From the passenger seat, his assistant glanced at him curiously. Sir, everything as expected? Michael nodded. Better than expected. Let them believe they've won. For now. Ich de fois. The engine purred as the car rolled smoothly down the street, leaving behind the golden glow of the Kingston Royale's entrance. Inside, Stephen leaned against the front desk with smug satisfaction. I told him to never come back. Problem solved. The words echoed faintly, destined to return with a vengeance far sooner than he imagined. The warm hum of the black sedan was a soothing contrast to the biting cold Michael had endured just moments earlier. Inside, the soft leather seats, subtle scent of cedar, and faint classical music playing in the background were luxuries he rarely let himself notice anymore. His assistant, Elena, sat poised with a tablet in her lap, her tailored coat neatly pressed. She eyed him with a mix of concern and curiosity. That was brutal, sir. Are you sure you want to keep going with this? Michael's eyes, dark and unreadable, watched the hotel's glowing facade disappear into the distance through the tinted window. I needed to see how they behave when no one is watching. Now I know. Elena hesitated. The board meeting starts in less than 30 minutes. I've notified them of your arrival. They're already assembling at the hotel's executive lounge. Should I call ahead and alert management? Michael shook his head slowly. No one. I want them to reveal who they are. Give them these next 15 minutes to believe they've gotten away with it. Let them show their true nature. The sedan glided through the rain-slicked streets, the city's lights casting fractured patterns on the wet pavement. Inside, Michael sat motionless, reflecting. He remembered another night years ago, walking home as a teenager in hand-me-down clothes, drenched by the same kind of cold drizzle, thinking the world had forgotten about people like him. He had sworn then that if he ever gained power, he would never forget. Back at the hotel, the lobby returned to its polished routine. Stephen barked orders at bellhops and receptionists, waving off inquiries with dismissive hand gestures. We've got a high-profile VIP visit this afternoon, he said smugly to Amber, the front desk clerk. Let's make sure everything's perfect. The last thing we need is another situation. Amber nodded, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. What a nightmare that was. People like that don't belong here. Stephen smirked and glanced at his watch. Don't worry, he won't be back. Thomas, standing nearby, clenched his jaw slightly but remained silent. Outside, the black sedan rounded the final corner back toward the Kingston Royale. Michael straightened his shoulders, his expression now one of quiet, unwavering authority. Time's up, Michael murmured. The car eased to a stop at the curb. Elena quickly gathered the portfolio of documents. Are you ready, sir? Michael King nodded once. More than ready. Let's remind them who really owns that place. The door opened with a soft click, and Michael stepped out into the misty afternoon air, walking toward the towering entrance of the hotel he had built from nothing. You'll never be more than a poor kid from nowhere, the factory foreman had spat, wiping greasy hands on his stained overalls. The words seared into 12-year-old Michael King's memory as he stood silent and small outside the looming textile mill of Birmingham, Alabama. Michael clenched his fists. His father, Robert King, a quiet, hard-working janitor, knelt beside him later that night under the flickering porch light of their crumbling apartment. Don't you listen to them, son, Robert whispered, his calloused hand resting on Michael's thin shoulder. Your life will be bigger than this place. I know it. Life for Michael had never been easy. Born in 1968 in a neighborhood where cracked sidewalks and boarded-up windows told stories of hardship, Michael grew up knowing the weight of poverty. His mother, Angela King, worked long hours cleaning houses, leaving before dawn and returning well after dark. At school, Michael's clothes were faded and patched. The other kids mocked him cruelly. Hey, king of the trash heap, they'd jeer as he walked past with his hand-me-down backpack held tightly. Yet Michael never let their laughter break him. He spent every spare minute at the tiny local library. There, beneath buzzing fluorescent lights and between worn shelves, he found escape and inspiration in stories of leaders, visionaries, and hotel moguls. Michael devoured tales of empire builders, dreaming of skyscrapers, ballrooms, and marble lobbies far removed from the choking dust of the mill. By age 14, Michael delivered newspapers at dawn, cleaned shoes at the courthouse steps by noon, and stocked shelves at the corner store by night. Every dollar earned was hoarded for one purpose: knowledge. His mother would find him asleep many nights at the chipped kitchen table, his head resting on the cracked cover of a used business textbook. "Dream big, baby," she'd whisper, tucking a worn blanket over his narrow shoulders. "One day you'll build something no one can take from you." Tragedy struck when Michael was 16. His father collapsed during an overnight shift and never recovered. Grief nearly swallowed Michael whole, but instead of giving up, he doubled down. With his mother's encouragement, he took a janitor's job at the local roadside motel to help pay the rent. There, amidst the scent of bleach and the hum of ice machines, Michael first touched the world he would one day conquer. He watched how guests were greeted or ignored. He studied how staff interacted. He saw both cruelty and kindness. One rainy night, after finishing a late shift, Michael stood under the flickering motel sign and stared up at the dark clouds. One day, he vowed under his breath, "I will own places like this. I will build something better." Back in the sedan, present day, Michael's reflection flickered faintly in the car window. The humiliation at the Kingston Royale had felt like every rejection he had endured as a child, but the fire inside him had only burned brighter. The misty city light stretched ahead like a road he had paved through sheer grit and determination. "Michael, we can't keep the lights on if you don't take the night shift." "Mrs. Alvarez," the motel manager, told him bluntly. The flickering fluorescent sign outside buzzed in the humid Alabama night. 16-year-old Michael King wiped sweat from his brow and nodded. "I'll do it," he said quietly, knowing his mother depended on every dollar he brought home. The years that followed hardened him in ways few could imagine. At sunrise, he delivered papers to rows of silent, crumbling houses. At noon, he stocked shelves at the corner market where customers barely noticed the skinny kid with the determined eyes. By dusk, he pushed his janitor's cart down endless motel hallways, scrubbing floors and hauling linens. The work was exhausting. His hands were blistered. His back ached. But Michael never complained. With every paycheck, he bought used business books from the thrift store, reading under the dim bulb of their tiny kitchen late into the night. One evening, as thunder rolled outside, his mother gently closed the book he was studying. "Baby, you need rest," she whispered, brushing his hair. "You're burning yourself out." Michael shook his head. "I'm going to change things." "Mama, I can feel it. I just have to keep going." At the motel, he watched the managers and guests. He learned how disputes were handled, how satisfied customers returned and angry ones never did. He memorized which of staff thrived and which failed. An older bellman, Mr. Jenkins, became an unlikely mentor. "Kid," Jenkins told him, sliding a luggage cart toward the elevator, "always watch the details. It's the little things that make or break a guest's experience. Remember that if you ever run a place like this." Michael absorbed everything. By 18, he had saved enough to enroll part-time in a local community college business program. His days became longer, balancing school, work, and caring for his mother. One winter night, bundled against the icy wind, Michael stared at a towering downtown hotel. Its golden lights sparkled like a promise. "Someday," he whispered, "I'll build something like this. A place where no one feels small." Years passed. With relentless persistence, Michael graduated. He took any job in the hotel industry: front desk clerk, bellboy, night auditor, assistant manager. Each role taught him more. He worked double shifts, volunteered for the worst assignments, and built a reputation for integrity and tireless work ethic. In his mid-20s, Michael made his boldest move, pooling savings and small investor loans to buy a rundown roadside inn. The Kingston Motor Lodge was nothing like the grand hotels he dreamed of, but it was a start. Day by day, night by night, Michael scrubbed, painted, and refurbished it himself. He greeted every guest by name, fixed leaky faucets, and negotiated with suppliers for better rates. Slowly, the lodge turned a profit. Word spread. Guests returned. Michael reinvested every cent into improvements. "You're crazy for working this hard," a fellow innkeeper joked once. Michael only smiled. "I'm building something no one can take away." The foundation of what would become the Kingston Royale Empire had begun, rooted in sweat, sacrifice, and the unwavering belief that kindness and excellence could coexist in hospitality. The engine of the black sedan purred smoothly as it coasted through the rain-slicked streets. Michael King sat quietly, staring out at the sparkling city skyline. the glowing lights reflected in the glass like distant stars he had once only dreamed of reaching. His assistant, Elena, flipped through financial reports on her tablet. Michael, the quarterly numbers are exceptional. Occupancy rates at Kingston Royal properties are up 18%. Our expansion into Europe has surpassed all projections. Michael gave a faint nod, but his gaze remained distant. His mind drifted to the first crumbling motel he had bought decades earlier. Back then, no one had believed a poor kid from Alabama could build anything that mattered. The Kingston Royal Empire now spanned continents. Luxury hotels from New York to Paris to Tokyo bore his name in gold lettering. The very hotel that had just thrown him out was the flagship jewel in his global portfolio. As the sedan turned the final corner, Michael leaned back in his seat. The elegant lobby of the Kingston Royal loomed ahead. "Sir," Elena said softly, "the board has been briefed. They're waiting for you upstairs. Should I notify the general manager?" Michael's lips curled into the faintest smile. "Not yet. Let them finish revealing who they really are." In his lap rested a slim leather folder. Inside were documents that confirmed what few at the Kingston Royal suspected. Michael King held 51% controlling interest of the entire hospitality group. He wasn't just a wealthy investor. He was the owner. Years ago, after his roadside motel had blossomed into a small chain, Michael had made bold acquisitions, boutique hotels on the verge of bankruptcy, faded landmarks begging for restoration. He poured in capital, time, and his relentless personal standard of excellence. His philosophy was simple. Luxury meant nothing without dignity and compassion. In mergers and negotiations, Michael had remained in the background, preferring his company's brand to take center stage. Few knew the soft-spoken founder's face. Even fewer would have imagined the man in ragged clothes who had just been mocked was their ultimate boss. The rain tapped gently against the window. Michael ran a hand over his tailored yet understated coat. There was poetic symmetry in returning as an unknown guest to the empire he had built from dust. This place, he thought, was meant to embody everything I had once been denied. Respect, warmth, welcome for all. Somewhere along the way, some forgot that. Today, they will remember. The car eased to a soft stop under the grand porte-cochere of the Kingston Royal. Valets in crisp uniforms bustled about, unaware of the moment that was about to unfold. Elena looked over at him, her expression half concern, half admiration. "Are you sure you want to do this personally?" Michael met her eyes. "Absolutely. If I don't hold them accountable, who will?" The door opened with a soft click. Michael stepped out onto the polished stone walkway, lifted his chin against the misty drizzle, and strode confidently toward the glass doors. The very same doors that had been slammed shut to him hours earlier. The grand lobby of the Kingston Royal hummed with quiet luxury, the soft click of polished shoes on marble floors, the gentle clink of crystal glasses at the bar, the low murmur of distinguished guests. Yet under the glittering chandeliers, an unmistakable air of smug satisfaction radiated from one man. Stephen, the front desk supervisor, leaned casually against the counter, twirling a sleek hotel pen between his fingers. He stole a glance at his reflection in the mirrored wall behind him and straightened his tie with a self-satisfied smirk. "Problem handled," he whispered under his breath. As always, Amber, a young receptionist with sharp features and an equally sharp tongue, strolled over with a stack of check-in forms. "That guy earlier, what a mess," she scoffed. "You handled it like a pro. Guests were watching, and you kept your cool." Stephen chuckled darkly. "Some people just don't belong in a place like this. I mean, honestly, the nerve. Walking in here like he owned it." Amber rolled her eyes. "He probably crawled out of a shelter. The way he looked, I can still smell him." Stephen nodded. "I hope security made it clear he's banned permanently." Nearby, Thomas, the security guard, stood uncomfortably near the entrance. His brows furrowed deeply as he overheard the exchange. His hand instinctively tightened around his radio. Something about the old man's calm demeanor still lingered in his mind. Guests continued to flow in and out. Two elderly patrons whispered to each other near the fireplace. A wealthy couple passed by, barely concealing their disapproval of the earlier incident. "Stephen," the concierge called from across the lobby, "there's an important VIP arriving soon. Some international figure. They've sent word that everything must be perfect." Stephen waved dismissively. "Relax. We've had senators, movie stars, CEOs walk through these doors. Whoever it is, we'll handle it." As he returned to flipping through guest folios, His voice dropped to a cocky whisper. Whoever this VIP is, they'll get the best. Unlike that bum from earlier. Amber giggled in agreement. It's almost funny. He really thought he could speak to someone important. Stephen leaned back comfortably, oblivious to the irony about to unfold. I told him to leave and not come back. He won't. People like him never do. Thomas stared at the glass doors, his instincts screaming that the situation wasn't over. The doors remained closed for now, but the storm that was Michael King approached steadily, ready to shatter Stephen's false sense of control. The rhythmic tapping of raindrops against the grand glass entrance doors created a soft, almost hypnotic backdrop. Stephen stood confidently behind the front desk, scrolling lazily through upcoming reservations on the computer screen. Then the doors parted. A sleek black sedan with tinted windows slid to a graceful stop beneath the illuminated porte-cochere. Valets straightened instinctively, sensing something important. The back passenger door opened with a deliberate slowness that commanded attention. Out stepped Michael King. Gone were the tattered coat and scuffed sneakers. Michael now wore a sharply tailored dark charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and understated silk tie. His presence was magnetic, tall, poised, and radiating a quiet, immovable authority. The transformation was so extreme that none of the staff recognized the man they had mocked and ejected only hours before. Following closely behind Michael was Elena, dressed immaculately, holding a thin leather portfolio. Two distinguished legal advisors in dark overcoats flanked them, stepping into the lobby with purposeful strides. Behind them, three impeccably dressed members of the Kingston Royale board trailed in solemn silence. The lobby's gentle conversations faded into shocked murmurs. Stephen looked up lazily from the desk and froze. His jaw slackened involuntarily as his eyes locked on Michael King. For a beat, Stephen could neither speak nor move. A sharp chill raced down his spine. Amber leaned closer and whispered, Who is that? Thomas stood straight by the door, eyes widening slowly in recognition. He inhaled sharply, a silent confirmation dawning. Michael's polished shoes echoed powerfully on the marble floor with each step. His expression was calm yet unshakably firm. Stephen recovered just enough to plaster on a plastic smile. Good afternoon, Michael, sir. May I help you? Michael paused, his gaze sweeping the grand space as though assessing every inch, every flaw. Oh, you will, Michael replied evenly, his voice soft but laced with steely undertones. Elena approached Stephen and laid a single pristine business card on the desk. Stephen glanced down. His face drained of color as he read the embossed gold lettering. Michael King, founder and chairman. Kingston Royale International. Time seemed to halt. Michael calmly adjusted his cufflinks and stared directly into Stephen's trembling eyes. I believe you told me to never return. I'm here to discuss that. The lobby fell into a stunned, heavy silence. Stephen's lips parted soundlessly as he fumbled to regain composure. His usual arrogance dissolved into panic. Beads of sweat formed along his hairline as he stood rigid behind the polished counter. Amber stared in disbelief, her mouth slightly agape. Around them, bellhops, valets, and concierges whispered urgently to one another. Even the distinguished guests paused, sensing an unexpected drama unfolding. Thomas, standing stiff near the entrance, clenched his jaw and exhaled slowly. He alone realized that the man before them, the one he had reluctantly escorted out, was in fact the most powerful figure connected to the building they all served. Michael King let the silence linger. He slowly removed his gloves, laid them neatly on the front desk, and then looked calmly at Stephen. You told me I didn't belong here, Michael said with chilling calmness. You ridiculed me, denied me, had me forcibly removed, all because you judged me by appearances. Stephen opened his mouth, but no words came. His hands gripped the counter edge tightly. Would you like to try that again? Michael continued smoothly. His piercing gaze held Stephen frozen. Elena, composed and methodical, stepped forward. From her leather portfolio, she produced a thick set of official documents bearing the Kingston Royale letterhead. She handed them silently to the two legal advisors, who placed them side by side on the front desk. Per corporate bylaws, one of the lawyers stated in a cold professional tone, we confirm, Mr. Michael King holds a controlling interest of 51% ownership in Kingston Royale International. The words echoed through the marbled lobby like a thunderclap. Gasps swept the onlookers. Amber stumbled backward, visibly pale. Stephen's hands fell away from the desk as his posture collapsed under the weight of realization. Mr. King, Elena added, the board is gathered upstairs and awaits your instruction. Michael nodded once and turned his gaze back to Stephen. I think I will meet them. But first, the tension in the room thickened. Stephen swallowed hard, his voice breaking for the first time. Mr. King, I didn't know. There must have been some misunderstanding. Michael raised a single hand, silencing him. You had your chance, Michael said firmly. You showed me who you really are. Without waiting for a response, Michael turned and walked purposefully toward the private elevator bank, his entourage flanking him. The heavy silence left behind in the lobby was deafening. Every eye followed him as the doors slid open with a soft chime and closed just as silently, taking Michael King upward, to the boardroom, to justice, and to the next chapter of reckoning. The private elevator glided smoothly to the top executive floor. The soft chime announced its arrival. As the doors slid open, Michael King stepped into the grand boardroom of the Kingston Royale. The room fell silent. Mahogany-paneled walls, floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views of the skyline, and a massive, polished conference table filled the space. Around it sat the powerful men and women of the Kingston Royale Board, CFOs, COOs, senior regional managers. Laptops were snapped shut. Pens froze mid-stroke. At the head of the table, Gerald Pierce, chairman of the board, narrowed his eyes. Mr. King Emeritus. We weren't expecting. Michael held up a hand calmly. No need for pleasantries. I believe there's something we must clarify. Elena and the two legal advisors entered behind him and laid out the documents. The official ownership certificates gleamed under the soft light. Gerald's brow furrowed as he read. Slowly, the color drained from his face. You hold majority control, he whispered, stunned. Michael's voice was low, composed, and absolute. 51% controlling interest. As of this moment, any illusion of my being a silent partner is over. I am the founder and chairman of this company, and I am taking direct action. Gasps rippled around the table. This morning, Michael continued, pacing slowly around the room, I walked into this hotel unannounced, wearing old clothes, as a simple man seeking help. What I witnessed disgusted me. Disrespect, arrogance, cruelty to someone perceived as beneath notice. He stopped and locked eyes with each board member in turn. None could meet his gaze. I built this company from a broken-down roadside motel with my bare hands, Michael said, his voice tightening. The Kingston Royale brand was meant to stand for dignity and excellence, for every guest, regardless of wealth or appearance. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. He paused, his tone icy. That ends today. The room remained deathly quiet. Gerald swallowed hard. Michael and Antoine, what are your intentions? Michael smiled faintly but without warmth. Simple. To clean house, to reset the culture, to remind everyone from the boardroom to the front desk who we are and what we stand for. Elena stepped forward and handed Gerald the final document, an executive order demanding an immediate internal review of all personnel and management policies across every property. We begin right here. Right now, Michael said firmly. The next phase of Kingston Royale starts today, under my watch. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. No one dared object. The elevator doors remained open as if waiting. Michael turned toward them. Send for Stephen. The elevator doors whispered closed, then reopened a minute later. Stephen stepped out hesitantly, adjusting his tie and smoothing his blazer as if trying to maintain an air of confidence. He didn't yet know what awaited him. As he entered the boardroom, the oppressive silence struck like a wall. His gaze darted nervously around the imposing faces of the executives. Then his eyes landed on Michael King, standing tall at the head of the table. The color drained from Stephen's face. Mr. Kicken or Wayne, he stammered, voice trembling. I didn't know. Michael raised a hand and cut him off coldly. Spare me the excuses. We are not here to exchange pleasantries. We are here to discuss your conduct. Stephen shifted uncomfortably, sweat beading at his temples. Michael motioned toward Thomas, the security guard, who had just arrived at the request of the board. Thomas stepped forward solemnly and handed Elena a USB drive. This, Elena announced, connecting it to the large conference monitor, is security footage from this morning. The video played in crisp, high definition. The board members watched in stunned silence as Stephen barked orders at Michael disguised as a homeless man, as he clicked his fingers for security, as he openly mocked Michael with guests and staff watching. Stephen shrank visibly with each frame. Michael stood motionless, arms crossed. His voice was calm yet razor-sharp. You judged a human being by their appearance. You failed our core values. You embarrassed this company. Stephen opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came. Michael continued, I built Kingston Royale to be a sanctuary of respect and hospitality for all. You turned it into a fortress of arrogance. The board murmured quietly, their expressions turning from shock to disgust. Gerald, still visibly shaken, leaned forward. Michael, what do you recommend? Michael's reply was immediate. Effective immediately, Stephen is terminated from his position as front desk supervisor. His access to all company systems and properties is revoked. The silence in the room was deafening. Stephen staggered back a step, his face ghostly pale. Please, Dowezo. Please, I didn't know. I was just... Michael's voice hardened. You were just proving to me why leadership must be earned, not taken for granted. Thomas quietly stepped to Stephen's side. You will be escorted from the premises, Michael finished. The board nodded in unanimous agreement. Stephen looked around, but found no allies. His shoulders sagged. Head bowed, he followed Thomas out of the room, disappearing into the cold corridor. Michael exhaled slowly, then turned to the stunned room. This is only the beginning, he declared. Kindness and excellence will no longer be optional. They will be mandatory at Kingston Royale. The heavy boardroom doors closed with a soft finality behind Stephen. A collective breath seemed to release from the room. Michael turned toward Elena and nodded. Moments later, the elevator opened once again. This time, Maria stepped out hesitantly, her uniform neat but modest, her eyes wide with uncertainty. Sir, she whispered nervously as Elena guided her gently into the room. Am I in trouble? I only wanted to help. Michael offered a rare, warm smile. Quite the opposite. Maria, you reminded me today of the values I founded this company on. Maria glanced around nervously at the imposing faces seated around the vast table. Gerald, now recovered from his earlier shock, nodded kindly. Michael gestured for Maria to step forward. Maria, when everyone else turned away, you chose kindness. You showed compassion to someone others dismissed. That is the true heart of hospitality. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. I just did what felt right. Michael's voice carried with strength and conviction. And that is why you are here. Effective immediately, you are promoted to Supervisor of Guest Services at Kingston Royale. The board members murmured approvingly. Some even smiled for the first time since Michael's arrival. Maria gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. I don't know what to say. Thank you. Michael wasn't finished. Additionally, I am establishing a scholarship fund in your name. Should you or any member of your family wish to pursue education, it will be fully funded by Kingston Royale. The room erupted into applause. Maria shook her head in disbelief, tears spilling down her cheeks. You don't have to do that, Sir. Michael smiled softly. You taught this company a lesson today. Maria, I insist. Even Thomas, standing near the door, allowed himself a rare grin. The sound of clapping grew louder as staff who had quietly gathered outside the boardroom doors joined in. Word had traveled fast. The mysterious man who had been thrown out earlier had returned not just as a guest, but as the very owner. And justice had been served. Michael turned to the stunned board. Let this be a reminder. No act of kindness goes unnoticed. Excellence in service starts with respect and compassion. As Maria wiped her tears and bowed her head gratefully, Michael glanced out the panoramic windows overlooking the city. For the first time that day, the corners of his mouth lifted in quiet satisfaction. The reckoning was complete. The healing would now begin. The applause faded slowly as the boardroom settled into a heavy silence once more. Michael King's sharp gaze swept over the assembled executives. His tone was calm but unyielding. Stephen's dismissal was only the first step. There must be accountability at every level. He walked deliberately around the table, stopping behind several senior managers who squirmed under his piercing stare. The toxic culture that festered under my nose ends now, Michael declared. Effective immediately, I am ordering an internal audit across all Kingston Royale properties. Any manager or supervisor who has violated our core values of respect, integrity, and hospitality will face disciplinary action, up to and including termination. The board members exchanged tense glances. For years, many had operated unchecked, growing complacent in their positions. Elena stepped forward and placed a printed document onto the table. This is the formal directive. The audit begins today. Random undercover evaluations will also be conducted at all locations moving forward. Michael nodded. No one is above this. Not even the most senior executives. At the back of the room, Thomas stood straighter. The announcement resonated deeply. It was a message the company had desperately needed. Michael continued, "Additionally, I will be forming a new ethics and culture committee composed of staff from every level of the organization, from housekeepers to general managers. Everyone deserves a voice in shaping the future of Kingston Royale." A few gasps followed. This was unheard of in the rigid hierarchy of the luxury hotel industry. Gerald Pierce cleared his throat nervously. "Michael, I support your vision, but some investors may see this as extreme." Michael turned to him without hesitation. "Respect is not extreme, Gerald. It's non-negotiable. We will be known not only for our luxury, but for our humanity. Anyone unwilling to embrace that vision is free to walk away today." The tension crackled in the air. Yet slowly, almost reluctantly, the board members nodded one by one. Michael's voice softened only slightly. "I won't accept public apologies or hollow statements. What I want is action. Real, measurable change. Starting now." The heavy grandfather clock in the corner chimed once, as if sealing the decree. The reckoning had begun. Michael folded his arms behind his back and stared out the window once more. Far below, the svelte entrance of Kingston Royale bustled with life, staff carrying luggage, guests checking in, unaware that the very soul of the company had just shifted. "Let the world know," Michael whispered to himself. "We are no longer just another luxury brand. We are the gold standard of dignity and compassion." The late afternoon light poured golden beams across the vast conference room as the final echoes of Michael King's decree lingered. Michael stepped back from the window and turned to the group. "There is one more matter we must address today," he said. His voice softened but carried the same weight of authority. He pressed a button on the side table. Moments later, the doors opened and Maria re-entered, her expression still unsure, clearly believing her promotion had been more than generous. Michael gestured kindly. "Maria, please join us once again." Maria stepped forward nervously, wringing her hands. Michael smiled warmly. "You have already been recognized for your compassion, but the time has come to publicly clear your name and establish the standard you represent." He motioned to Elena, who quickly brought out a framed certificate of excellence bearing Kingston Royale's seal. Michael took the frame and held it up for all to see. "Maria Garcia," he said clearly, "for your exceptional display of humanity, integrity, and hospitality, you are hereby named the Employee of the Year for Kingston Royale International. Your name and story will be permanently displayed at every property worldwide." The announcement sent ripples through the room. Maria gasped, tears brimming instantly. "Sir, I'm just a maid. I never expected." Michael shook his head gently. "There is no just in kindness, Maria. You did what no amount of training or protocol could teach. You led by example." Applause erupted. Thomas clapped enthusiastically, joined quickly by the board, and then the gathered staff peeking from the hallway. "Furthermore," Michael continued once the clapping subsided, "the wrongful assumption, the humiliation, the judgment that you might have feared for helping a stranger, today we make it official. You did everything right. You upheld our highest ideals when others failed." Maria wiped her cheeks, trembling. "Thank you, Mr. King. I'll keep doing my best. I won't let you down." Michael smiled warmly. "You already haven't." The ceremony, though simple, resonated deeply across the building. Word of Maria's recognition spread like wildfire. Staff whispered in admiration. Guests paused to learn her story. And for the first time in years, a powerful reminder rippled across the Kingston Royale family. Doing the right thing mattered. As the sun dipped lower behind the skyline, Michael caught Maria's grateful smile and nodded. The wrongs had been righted. The empire he had built was now slowly being steered back to the course he had always intended. The evening shadows stretched long across the skyline as the boardroom emptied. Executives filed out quietly, their usual confident chatter replaced by reflective silence. Thomas offered Maria a respectful nod as she exited with Elena, now a figure of inspiration across the company. Only Michael remained. He stood alone at the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the city pulse below. The once familiar hustle of the luxury hotel world now seemed different, more human, less transactional. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Gerald Pierce. "Surveyor was, surveyor, son." "Michael," Gerald began hesitantly, "I want to say, you were right. We let the culture slip. I let it slip." Michael turned slowly, his expression calm but resolute. We all did, Gerald. Complacency is the first step to collapse. I allowed myself to trust systems more than people. That changes now. Gerald nodded slowly. What happens next? Michael's gaze softened. We rebuild. With the right people. From the ground up. People like Maria. People who understand what it means to serve with compassion. The older man sighed. And Stephen? Michael hesitated for a moment. He's out. But I don't believe in destroying someone permanently. I've instructed HR to offer him access to counseling and career transition services. No blacklist, no humiliation, just consequence with dignity. Gerald smiled faintly. That's more mercy than most would have given. Michael walked over to the table where the framed Employee of the Year certificate still rested, then turned back to Gerald. If we only punish, we become what we hate. We must teach, inspire. Outside, the neon glow of Kingston Royale's grand entrance illuminated guests arriving under soft gold lights. Valets opened doors with genuine smiles. Doormen greeted warmly. The energy had shifted. Michael watched quietly. The change starts small, but it grows. One act of kindness leads to another. That's the future I believe in. Gerald extended his hand. Michael shook it firmly. As Gerald left, Michael remained by the window, his reflection merging with the night cityscape. In the distance, Maria walked across the lobby, unaware that her simple act had sparked a revolution. Michael smiled faintly. The first steps toward redemption had been taken. The empire he built from nothing was finally becoming what he had always envisioned, a place where no one would ever again be judged by appearances. The future of Kingston Royale had begun. The dawn broke soft and golden over the city skyline, casting long shafts of light through the grand glass facade of Kingston Royale. Inside the corporate headquarters, change had already begun. Michael King walked briskly down the executive hallway, flanked by Elena and two newly appointed ethics committee members, one a young housekeeper from the Paris property, the other a night auditor from New York. Their presence marked a monumental shift. Every level of the company now had a voice. In the main conference room, the leadership team had gathered for the most important meeting in years. Michael stepped to the podium with quiet authority. Effective today, he began, the Kingston Royale Code of Culture will be implemented company-wide. This is not just a document. It's a living promise, a commitment to dignity, respect, and kindness for guests and staff alike. The large screen behind him lit up with the new vision statement. At Kingston Royale, luxury is defined not only by fine linens and marble floors, but by compassion, respect, and service with heart. Every person matters. Michael continued. We will launch a global training program designed by the very people who live the guest experience. Our housekeeping teams, bellhops, receptionists, and concierges. They will lead the way in rebuilding our standard of excellence. The room erupted into approving applause. Additionally, Michael added, we are introducing the Kingston Kindness Recognition Program. Any staff member, at any level, who goes above and beyond in compassion and service will be honored quarterly at every location. At the back of the room, Maria stood quietly, her cheeks flushed as her colleagues gave her a standing ovation. She had unknowingly inspired the program that would now define the company's legacy. Michael scanned the faces of his team, faces that reflected all ages, ethnicities, and backgrounds. The old corporate hierarchy had been replaced by inclusivity. We are not perfect, Michael acknowledged, but starting today, we hold ourselves accountable not just for profit, but for people. If we get this right, we will not just lead the hotel industry, we will redefine it. As the meeting adjourned, teams rushed into action. Flyers for the new code of culture were printed and distributed across properties worldwide. Training materials were translated into dozens of languages. From Los Angeles to London, from Tokyo to Cape Town, the ripple effect began. Staff meetings buzzed with excitement. Guest feedback cards included new questions about kindness and respect. General managers led town halls on culture and ethics. By the end of the week, Michael stood at the rooftop terrace of the Kingston Royal flagship, looking down at the bustling streets. The journey had been long and painful, but standing there in the golden morning light, he knew this was the legacy worth building. Kingston Royale had been reborn. The sun cast a soft glow across the grand entrance of the Kingston Royale flagship property. A small but dignified ceremony had gathered on the polished marble steps. Michael King stood at the center, surrounded by key staff, board members, and media representatives. Flanking him were Maria, now wearing her new supervisor name badge with humble pride, and Thomas, whose silent integrity had not gone unnoticed. A large velvet cloth covered a gleaming bronze plaque mounted onto the exterior wall of the hotel. Michael stepped forward, microphone in hand. The crowd hushed. Today, he began, marks not just a symbolic gesture, but the beginning of a permanent promise. For too long, many believed luxury was only about wealth and exclusivity. We reject that notion. True luxury is a feeling, being treated with dignity and kindness no matter who you are. He turned to Maria and nodded. This change was inspired by the quiet actions of everyday heroes like Maria and countless others across our company who live this value every day without recognition. That ends now. With a simple pull, Michael removed the cloth. Gasps and soft applause followed. The plaque glinted in the sunlight. In elegant engraved letters it read, "Every person deserves respect. Every act of kindness matters." This hotel and all Kingston Royal properties worldwide are committed to this unshakable truth. Michael King, founder and chairman. Maria stared in disbelief, her hand instinctively rising to her mouth. Thomas smiled faintly and gave her an approving nod. Photographers snapped pictures. News outlets recorded video as guests, staff, and executives admired the message. A young bellhop whispered to his colleague, "That's going to be on every hotel?" His friend nodded. "Every single one. Worldwide." Michael stepped back, watching the reactions. His voice softened as he spoke quietly to Elena. "It's not about buildings or brand anymore. It's about people. Let this be the cornerstone of everything we do going forward." As the crowd dispersed, guests paused to read the plaque as they entered and exited. Families smiled. Elderly visitors took photos. Staff walked by with renewed pride. From that day forward, each Kingston Royal property globally would install an identical plaque at their entrances. It became the unmistakable symbol of transformation, a daily reminder that no act of kindness was too small, no guest too insignificant. Standing under the warm afternoon sky, Michael allowed himself a rare, full smile. The empire he had built was no longer just a brand. It was now a movement. The golden afternoon light slowly melted into dusk as the crowd dispersed from the ceremony. Michael King lingered at the edge of the hotel's grand entrance, watching quietly as guests arrived. Bellhops hustled luggage inside, and the bronze plaque reflected the first soft flickers of evening lights. From a distance, Maria helped an elderly couple struggling with their bags. The couple smiled warmly at her kindness. A young valet held the door open for a family with children. Thomas nodded respectfully at passing guests. Michael's eyes softened. The culture he had dreamed of, the one built on respect and simple human decency, was already taking root before his eyes. Elena approached, phone and documents in hand, but paused when she noticed his distant gaze. "Sir, are you ready to head to the next meeting?" she asked quietly. Michael shook his head gently, smiling faintly. "Not just yet. I want to watch this for a while." For a few long moments, he stood in thoughtful silence. The Grand Kingston Royal sign glowed proudly above the entrance. The scene below looked almost like a living painting, a perfect blend of elegance and compassion. No one here knew he was the owner anymore. They only knew they were safe, respected, and welcome. As the last streaks of sunset painted the horizon, Michael turned to Elena. "Do me a favor," he said. "Make sure every property worldwide installs their plaque within the next month. And tell them not to rush. I want them to do it right." Elena nodded dutifully. "Of course, Mr. King." Michael looked back one final time. Maria, now laughing softly with the elderly couple, waved subtly at him. He gave a small nod in return. With a deep breath, Michael stepped away from the entrance and disappeared into the waiting black sedan. As the car pulled away slowly from the curb, the camera would linger on the glowing plaque under the hotel lights. The words shimmered like a silent vow against the night. Every person deserves respect. Every act of kindness matters. The soft hum of the city resumed as the screen gently faded to black. Soft piano notes drift through the background. Under the warm glow of the hotel entrance lights, Maria gently kneels to help an elderly guest adjust her coat. The guest smiles warmly, squeezing Maria's hand in quiet gratitude. Nearby, a bronze plaque reflects the soft golden lights. The engraved words catch the viewer's attention. Every person deserves respect. Every act of kindness matters. Michael King stands unnoticed in the distance, watching with a faint, contented smile. His journey has come full circle. The voice grows soft and reflective. Sometimes the greatest legacies are not built from stone and steel, but from compassion, humility, and the courage to choose kindness. A bellhop pauses to kneel and help a child tie a shoelace. A doorman shields a young couple with an umbrella as rain begins to fall. A housekeeper leaves a handwritten note of encouragement on a pillow for a weary traveler. The memory of young Michael King returns, working quietly at a small roadside motel late at night, scrubbing floors by the light of a single bulb. Then comes the present. Michael walks confidently through the Grand Kingston Royale lobby, the very empire he built from nothing. From a boy with nothing but dreams and determination, to a man who shaped a world where no one would be turned away, Michael King's journey belongs to all who believe kindness is strength. The lights of the city shimmer softly as Michael steps out into the misty evening, leaving the hotel behind with its warm lights glowing. The final image lingers on the plaque, its message glowing like a promise against the darkness. Because in the end, even the smallest act of kindness can ripple outward, touching hearts and changing lives in ways we never imagine. Sometimes, helping just one person changes everything. In a world that often judges by appearances, remember this: dignity and kindness are the true measures of greatness. It is not the suits, the titles, or the wealth that define a person. It is the simple acts, the warm smile, the hand extended to lift another, the courage to stand for what's right when no one is watching. The words linger like a soft breeze. Michael King's journey is not just the story of one man. It is a lesson for all of us to look beyond the surface, to treat every person with respect, no matter their station in life, to choose compassion, even when it's the harder path. Scenes of staff helping guests play in the mind's eye. The doorman greeting each guest with a genuine smile. The receptionist going the extra mile to help a family. The housekeeper leaving behind a kind note for a struggling traveler. At Kingston Royale, luxury was redefined, not as extravagance, but as a feeling. A place where no one walks in feeling small, invisible, or unwanted. A place where kindness is not rare, but the rule. A gentle pause allows the message to settle. You don't need to own an empire to make a difference. Every act, no matter how small, can change a life. A kind word, a helping hand, a moment of understanding. These are the things that build legacies. Let us all be the person who chooses kindness, who believes respect is not earned by appearance, but given by default to every soul we encounter. Because the world changes one choice at a time, and it starts with you. As the soft glow of the Kingston Royale faded into the calm night, the streets hummed gently under the scattered city lights. Somewhere, in another corner of the world, a bellhop helped an elderly traveler with heavy bags. A stranger held the door for a family juggling too many suitcases. A housekeeper paused to leave a kind note for a weary guest. Small gestures, unseen by crowds, yet powerful enough to brighten someone's day. The voice returns, steady and warm. Kindness rarely asks for recognition. It happens quietly, in the unnoticed corners of life. Yet it holds the power to change everything. The soft piano melody continues. If this story has stirred something in your heart, if you believe, like Michael King, that compassion can rebuild even the grandest of empires, let your voice be part of this journey. The streets seem to blur into every city, every hotel, every place where a small act could make the world softer. Leave a comment below with justice if you believe kindness matters. Like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to support us so we can continue bringing you more inspiring stories. The words settle with gentle finality, because sometimes the smallest gesture creates the loudest echo. The decision to help, the choice to care, the courage to lift another. These are the quiet revolutions that shape the world. The last lingering note plays. Thank you for being here with us. This is Unveiled Wealth. Until next time, remember, you already have the power to make a difference.